Hello everybody and welcome to Cloud Labs, the best place to serve the clouds and especially the Microsoft Cloud. My name is Dan and I am working as a partner technical consultant for Microsoft. As such, I am helping partners to plan, test and deploy cloud solutions for their end customers. I am working a lot, of course, with Microsoft Cloud services like Office 365 and Microsoft Azure, but I work also a lot with Exchange Server, with Link Server, which starting April will be called Sky for Business Server, and not to forget Active Directory. But let's get started with this first session of the Cloud Lab series, and I'm sure you may ask yourself, what's the problem of this guy here in the picture? Obviously he needs some kind of help from our side, but what does he really need? Fortunately, I know this guy, his name is David. He's working as an IT admin, he's a freelancer, and a few hours ago he received a call from one of his customers, and the customer was saying basically, "Hi David, last week we attended a conference and after this conference we are really eager and fully decided to move all our mails from our current on-premises infrastructure to Exchange Online in Office 365. Now, problem is that David does not have any kind of experience with Office 365 and Exchange Online, and of course no experience with migrations to Exchange Online. So I thought we could help David together in this session of the Cloud Lab series. And to start with, of course, when we're in front of such a scenario from our customers, the first thing we might ask ourselves, okay, what options do we have? This is the first step. And here I can tell you that we would have basically 4 migration options. We would have an IMAP migration, a cutover migration, a stage migration, and of course the Exchange hybrid deployment. Just to tell you briefly about IMAP, is a very easy migration type. Cutover and stage migrations are specific for environments where we have also Exchange servers, and hybrid deployment of course is a very complex option and feature rich let's say coexistence scenario where we can have mailboxes both on our Exchange server and of course in Exchange Online, and with both Exchange organizations working seamlessly together as if they would be only one organization. Good. These are then the 4 options that we would have to migrate mailboxes or mails from on-premises to the cloud. But then David asked me, okay, and of course this was a very legit question. Okay, but how can I pick which migration option is best suitable for my customer? And I wanted to help him a little bit further. And of course, when we want to do something like this, we would have to plan ahead. It is very important in IT that we always exactly plan ahead. And when we plan for an Exchange Online migration, of course, we have to take into consideration some major decision factors. And I want to briefly discuss with you the major decision factors for Exchange Online migrations. So the first one is the size of the company, of the customer. It's important if the customer is a large organization, if it's a medium customer or a small one, because it is one thing to migrate 15 mailboxes and it is totally different to migrate 50,000 mailboxes, let's say. So this is very important. The second decision factor is the coexistence, and this decision factor basically is important, and we would have to take it fully into consideration when we also have some Exchange servers on premise, because on an Exchange level we can have a rich coexistence, which is basically a hybrid deployment, as I told earlier, when both organizations, server and online, are working seamlessly together. But we would have also some kind of simple coexistence where, for example, some basic mail routing will be possible between Exchange Server and Exchange Online, but we wouldn't have calendar sharing, FreeBusy sharing, and so on. That's why it is important if the customer has some Exchange Server servers to know exactly what type of coexistence would he need or want for his organization. The third major decision factor is user provisioning, and this is also something very important for IT admins. Here we would have three major options. We could synchronize users, contacts and groups from our local Active Directory to the cloud using directory synchronization, or the newer tool which is called Azure Active Directory Synchronization. On the other hand, we could create the users manually in the Office 365 portal. If we want to automate this process, of course, we could create the users directly using Windows PowerShell connected to Office 365. We could make a CSV file with all the users that we want to create. We can import this CSV file in PowerShell, and based on the information in this CSV file, we can create then all the users in Exchange Online and of course in Office 365. But there is also another way or another thing to take into consideration, is that, for example, the cutover Exchange migration automatically creates users on Office 365. So in this case, we don't have to create them manually or to synchronize them, because the migration tool will create the users and so on. So this is also very, very important. Next step is of course the source server. Maybe this is the most important factor that we would have to take into consideration, because we know where we want to migrate. We want to go to Exchange Online, but in choosing what migration option, or when choosing a migration option, we would have to know also the source server, since based on the source server there could be some limitations. So mainly the source servers could be an Exchange server, IMAP server running Linux, for example. It could be a Lotus Notes, or it could be something like Google, Yahoo, or any other mail provider. And last but not least is identity management. What type of identity model would the customer like to implement in his company? Does he want let's say to manage the identities on premise in a local Active Directory, or does the customer maybe want to manage identities in cloud, so we can create the identities directly in cloud? And if we choose to let's say to manage identities on premise, do we need also to implement single sign-on via ADFS or not? So these are the 5 major decision factors that we would have to take into consideration when we plan an Exchange migration. So of course I showed David these few slides that we also discussed together right now, and right afterwards David called the customer and asked a lot of questions in order to see exactly what size the company is, what coexistence is needed, provisioning, source and identity management. And right after the call with the customer, David called me and told me the following thing. So the customer is a very small one. He has only 15 mailboxes. These mailboxes are hosted most probably on a Linux server, and he doesn't want any type of coexistence. Users should be of course created manually in Office 365 or with PowerShell, because the customer does not have any local Active Directory. And of course the identity model would be the cloud identity, so the identities will be managed in the cloud. So based on this information that David gathered from his customer, now I am able to recommend him to use an IMAP migration. And let's see a little bit what are the main features and benefits of an IMAP migration. First of all, it works with a large number of source mail systems. This means that the mail system that is a source could be a Linux, could be Lotus Notes, could be Exchange, could be basically any server, as long as IMAP is configured properly on that server, and of course as long as the hoster of this service does allow us to perform this type of migration. It works both with on-premises and hosted scenarios, and David's customer has, of course, a hosted scenario. It's maybe Gmail or Yahoo or a Linux server in England or in US. It doesn't have any importance. Then very interesting is that users can be migrated in batches. So if we have 100 users to migrate, we could migrate 10 users per day, and in 10 days we would complete the migration. And what's most important at all is that this type of migration does not require any other migration tool installed on premise. It does not require another server, so basically it does not require any other resources, which could be time or servers or money and so on. So you are good to go once you decided to use these migration options. Let's see some basic requirements for an IMAP migration and also some limitations, because as I said already, each migration type does have some limitations. And when we speak about IMAP, of course we would need the IMAP ports opened. Those ports would be, as you surely know, 143 for normal IMAP communication or 993 for secured SSL communication. The SMTP domain that we would like to use for the users, like for example user1@domain.com, should be added to Office 365 and configured to work with Exchange Online. This means that we would have to plan ahead and to take the necessary DNS configuration that is needed in order to have this domain up and running with Exchange Online. Very important is that users and mailboxes must be provisioned prior to the migration itself. So before we start the migration, we would have to create the users and make sure that we assign a license to these users, because in Exchange Online, mailbox creation is directly linked to license assignment. So as long as we assign a license to a user, a mailbox for this user will be created. When we remove a license from a user, the mailbox of this user will be deleted and will be in a soft deleted state for 30 days and in hard deleted state after these 30 days. But very important to remember that mailbox creation in Exchange Online is directly linked to license assignment. We cannot create a mailbox for a user in a different way than by assigning him a license. Then we would have to take into consideration that the maximum size of an email, of a message that we want to migrate so it's not allowed to exceed 35 megabytes. And of course we would have to gather the user credentials or set up admin credentials. From experience, I can tell you that in very small organizations where we perform this type of migrations, normally the IT admin asks all the users to set their passwords to a certain password, and all the users will have then the same password until this migration is finished. Afterwards, of course, everybody would change its password back on the source system, and on Exchange Online they will have then a total different set of passwords. Good. Then as a next step we would have to prepare a CSV file, because we can start this type of IMAP migration only based on a CSV file, in which we would have to provide only only three details, which are email address, username and password. Good to know is that in this CSV file we cannot have more than 50,000 rows. Very important. But if we would have more than 50,000 users, I really wouldn't recommend this IMAP migration anyway. But it is important to take this into consideration. Also, we have a very limited data migration scope. This means that we cannot migrate everything from the mailbox. And with this we can pass to the next part of the presentation, where we can see exactly what is migrated and what is not migrated. So first of all, of course, all mail messages are migrated from the inbox folder, but also from the other folders that were created in that specific mailbox. A limitation is that we can migrate only a maximum of 500,000 items. So if you have a mailbox which contains more than 500,000 items, then this mailbox will not be migrated to Exchange Online. It is possible to exclude some specific folder from the migration. Folders like deleted items, junk emails, spam, or so on. But what is not migrated, and it's important to note that down, is that contacts, calendars, tasks, and so on are not migrated. Of course, the folders that we exclude from the migration are also not migrated. And very important, the folders that contain in their name a / are also not migrated. This is due to some code in the data center, and we will have to be aware that this / in let's say in folder names is not allowed, and the messages from that folder won't be migrated. And finally, as I said, we cannot migrate mails that are larger than 35 megabytes. Good. Once we know all the feature, all the limitations, once we know what data will be migrated and what data won't be migrated, let's take a look at the final slide, let's say, with the IMAP migration flow. And this is the part that would help David very, very much, because we would say exactly step by step how he should proceed. As a first step, of course, he would have to provision the users in Office 365 and assign them licenses in order to create the mailboxes. Then, as a second step, we would have to gather the credentials and to prepare the CSV file. Then, as a third step, we can go on in Exchange Admin Center and start the wizard and start this IMAP migration batch. Once we have started this IMAP migration batch, we would have to know that this performs an initial sync and will sync all the mails that are at the current time present in the mailbox to Exchange Online. But if we let the migration batch simply going, every 24 hours it will perform a delta sync, which means that if in the last 24 hours certain users received some emails on their old mailbox, as long as the migration batch is present in Exchange Admin Center, every 24 hours these new emails will also be synced to the Office 365 mailbox. This means technically that those emails will be present on both parts, on the source system and also on Exchange Online. Once we have finished all users, so all mailboxes are migrated, it is time, of course, to change the MX record to point to Exchange Online servers. But when we do this, we would have to pay attention, because it is very important. After all mailboxes are migrated, we would have to change this MX record to point to Exchange Online. But afterwards, it's better to wait a further 24 hours for the last delta sync to go on before we can then complete the migration. This is because even if after we have changed the MX record due to time to leave and so on, it could be that some users may still receive some emails on the source mailbox. And in this case, we have to wait these 24 hours for this delta synchronization to take place. And afterwards, when this is done, we can complete the migration. We can simply do this by deleting the migration batch or migration batches from the Exchange Admin Center. And of course, as a final task, this is not directly related to the migration itself, is to do some final checks on the Exchange Online users and mailboxes, to set some attributes, to set some rules if the customer needs, mail tips, retention policies, retention tags, and everything that it is available with Exchange Online. So this would be a step-by-step IMAP migration flow. As I said, it's very easy. It's the easiest migration type to Exchange Online, and it also takes a very short amount of time. And the best thing is that also during this migration process, due to this delta sync which occurs every 24 hours, no mails will be lost. Good. And this concludes today's session. I talked to David right afterwards. He sent to the customer the presentation, and he also wrote down a plan on how they want to proceed on this, and everything is really on track. David is really happy to have figured this out right now. So I would like to thank you for watching this session. If you enjoyed it, then please share it, spread the words, use your social networks to share this video. Of course, a thumbs up in YouTube would be also more than appreciated. You can also contact me. I am present on Facebook, on Twitter, and so on, and all the details of my networks are below in the description of this video. So thank you very much again, and have a very nice day and nice days till we will hear each other the next time.